Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Lgct Grand Prix analysis. The analysis of the Longines Global Champions Tour Super Grand Prix of Prague with 13 of the best riders of the season in it. None of the riders came out of any round with more than 2 fences down. They were split by 4 seconds in round 1, however 2 were placed outside the time allowed with a very big consequence for round 2. And so that meant that the test of champions also became a test of Vezzani. The Italian passed the test brilliantly, and let's see why. Let's not wait any longer and start analyzing. Welcome. The first round of the Longines Global Champions Tour Super Grand Prix in Prague walked big, walked technical and difficult, but there was one line that really stood out. It was more than a line, it was a sequence, it was a chain of fences that needed a lot of control and planning. This is the line that we are talking about. It is the line from the Longines triple combination, with then a nearly 90-degree angle to a very skinny oxer of the astronomical clock, and then deep into the corner to St. Charles Bridge with the big gap underneath, and then a line into the combination of oxer and vertical. Now, we can talk a lot about the triple combination, and actually this distance and this distance is difficult to express in meters. The main line that you can express in meters is this one right here. 19 meters was the distance from Charles Bridge into the combination, and over that whole sequence, it's actually this fence that caused most trouble. The first oxer in the combination that caused a lot of issues for the riders. And that is remarkable. If you think about the number of fences that is being jumped here, you would think more about the triple combination or this oxer jumping into the corner or even the gap on the Charles Bridge, but none of that. It was the oxer into the double combination. It came on 19 meters, which is maybe a touch long, but not much. 90 meters is 4 strides, and depending on the jump you got over Charles Bridge and the stride you had on your horse, it was a little bit shorter or longer, but 19 is seemingly straightforward on 4 strides. No alternatives and no options. But what made this line then so difficult and so specific? Well, you had a lot of different approaches of these turns. For example, out of the triple combination, the standard is 6, and the standard out of it was also 6. But what is a standard if there are also alternatives? And we've got a lot of different approaches in that line lined up for you. Let's have a look at the man who was first to go, and that made it very difficult for himself. He had no options, he had no examples. He didn't see any riders ahead of him, so he had to ride on his own plan, on the way he had walked the course. Let's have a look at Michael Pender. Pender comes through the triple combination with his 2-time Lgct Grand Prix winner with Calais. Remarkably, he rides 6 here, 5 in here, but then he may have thought that 4 would ride him a little bit short, so he held there in his second stride, and then he had to push, and his last 2 strides, maybe with that, got him a little bit off the hind leg and got the flat jump over a proper 1.60 m tall oxer. You cannot repeat that enough. The Lgct Super Grand Prix was written out at 1.65 m. Oxers at 1.60 m, verticals, some verticals were up to 1.65 m. We'll talk about that later in this edition of the analysis. So Pender, for him, the 19 meters and the 4 strides should be normal. He thought he had to hold in the beginning and then had to push, and he pushed the front rail out. No doubt that if Pender would have gone 5th, or 8th or whatever, that he would have had the chance to look at a few other riders, and he would have ridden those 4 strides much calmer and much nicer. Now that is Michael Pender. He was one of the leading under-25 riders this season. There's another under-25 rider that got the most out of her season by winning an Lgct Grand Prix. It was Sanne Thijssen, and she did it in Madrid and qualified for this Super Grand Prix. Other angle here on the triple combination, and Sanne wants to go wide, and she is there at 6. And when she's at her 6th stride, there are too many meters between herself and the fence, and she decides to stop Conquidam RB and take him out of that line, because the 6 would have been not comfortable for Conqueror. In the end, it was not a nice Grand Prix. If you would look at the result list now, it says retired, and from the first round she had 29 penalties on her score sheet, but that had a lot to do with the fault at the first fence and that circle. All the rest were just time faults. Pender and Thijssen, the youngest riders in that Super Grand Prix. So let's have a look at a few older riders. For example, the former Lgct Super Grand Prix winner, Henrik Vanekman, of course, with King Edward. We've seen the 6s and 6s. Now it is Vanekman going on 5 and 6. He rides 5 out of the triple, and then 6 to Charles Bridge, and then the 4 into the combination. Another one who rode 5 out of the triple is McLean Ward on his top mare HH Azur. Here's the 5 strides, and then he makes a remarkable decision. Goes wider, goes deep into the corner, and adds a stride to go for 7 to Charles Bridge. Gets a very slow jump over the upright, and then pushing 4 strides out of the double by McLean Ward and HH Azur. So he rides a stride less than the standard to the skinny Oxer, rides a stride more than the standard into Charles Bridge and the rest of that line. So he's actually level in terms of strides there. But what stood out with McLean Ward is that in the long loop from the double up to the next fence, and that was actually quite a long loop, he didn't pick up the pace, he kept it nice and steady, and in the end, at the finish line, he was half a second out of the clock, caught a time fault, and that time fault, of course, he carried through into the second round, so he was never really in sync with the others to really battle for the win in the Super Grand Prix. That was McLean and Henrik Vanekman, who did 5 out of the triple and then 6 or 7 into the line. However, you can also